my mind was completely blown. My whole world was upside down, and I came back and I said to myself, I'm going to be not getting out of here, but I'm going to be doing something else, right? Like, there's a whole big world out there. There are so many people and experiences and perspectives. And I mean, from a motivation perspective, it completely changed the course of my life. I found that when it came down to the things that really mattered for me in my career and my happiness and my mental health, not just me in the prior role that I was in, but for a lot of people, workplaces fall short. When you're a manager that's managing someone who has now become a parent, you're not just managing them through doing a good job in terms of the role that they're in. You will be met with an intersection of their life, their very human, personal life. And as it should. Sometimes I hear from leaders saying, well, I barely spent time with my kids and that's just what I had to do. You have to think to yourself of, well, is that something that you really want to enforce and multiply? Because you are a multiplier as a leader. You set the stage. You set the culture.
Every leader has a story to tell, and the Safe Leader podcast uncovers the diversity story behind leading figures championing change to make our world a better place. Join me, your host, Mark McBride-Wright, as we hear from business leaders, academics, entrepreneurs, and agents of change as they share their journeys of innovation, resilience, and transformation. Together, we explore how they embrace the principles of safe leadership, sharing, acting, feeling, and empowering to create safer, more inclusive environments for everyone. Hello, welcome to this episode of the Safe Leader podcast. I'm your host, Mark McBride-Wright, and today I'm joined by Anna Burgan, who is an award-winning commercial leader and founder with over 15 years of experience spanning enterprise sales, business development, and workforce training. Having worked with global organizations, she's built a career at the intersection of commercial performance and people strategy, helping businesses drive growth while supporting their people to perform in real-world conditions. Most recently, Anna founded Make Space, a company focused on helping organizations retain working parents and protect performance through data-led insight, manager capability, and human-first workplace design. Her work addresses one of the most overlooked challenges in modern organizations: how to support people through different life stages without losing talent, engagement, or momentum. Alongside her commercial leadership, Anna has been a strong advocate for inclusive workplaces, playing a key role in developing employee resource groups and embedding practical, sustainable approaches to culture change. Her work today is driven by a clear mission to help organizations build environments where people can succeed at work without sacrificing life beyond it. Anna, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. What a bio. It feels good to hear it out loud.
It's, that's all you. So we only met recently, didn't we? Or got to know one another properly in the last few months. And so I was really excited when we first met to hear about you're in one of the most exciting stages of life in a business sense, which is when you're in that period of transition, transitioning from old things into the new things with your new business, Make Space, which I want to hear more about shortly. But the way we like starting things at the Safe Leader is to go back and find out about the person in front of us. Tell us about Anna as a youngster.
Oh dear, yes. Where do I start? So I was born and raised in New Jersey.
Okay.
And I had always, from a young age, my parents and my family instilled in me that if you wanted anything in this life, you're going to have to work for it. So I started babysitting at 12, which I'm not sure is an appropriate age to start babysitting, but alas, there I was, and taking on waitressing gigs and working in a bakery, and I worked my way all throughout college. So I'd say that me as a young child, I was introduced very early on into, starting to think about where I'd want to go and where I'd want to be in life, which, I think I've really always appreciated as an adult these days of
Yeah.
knowing what it takes to start from scratch and see where that road takes you.
So you have those enterprising skills then. So did you find when you were getting those first few dollars then for babysitting, that it sparked a kind of hunger for entrepreneurialism or financial independence, like a strong work ethic?
Yeah, I've had an entrepreneurial mindset for as far as I can remember. I mean, even earlier than that, I have this really funny memory actually of me being maybe in year three, going up to
Okay.
my librarian because I said, "Listen, I want to write a book. I'm going
Okay.
if I write this out, will you type it for me and print it for me so I could send it to publishers?" I think I was
Ooh.
7 or 8,
I
maybe a little bit
mean,
older.
did they, did,
You
did,
know,
did
a
your
little.
librarian help? Did that like nurture this ambition?
Yeah, I know my librarian, bless her. She just she went along with it. I was like, "Yes, Anna, I'll type it for you. I'll print it for you. You keep this copy." And we'll we'll look at things eventually. I was far too young for it, but I've always had that in me to
Yeah.
think about, oh right, what can I do to start to build my own path, start to find my own way forward. And I think networking and
Hmm.
knowing people around you is always instilled in me as well from a
Okay.
young age. For example, my parents encouraged me to reach out to all of our family friends to learn about what they did and what kind of careers they had. My mom in particular was a big push for getting internships and
Right.
leveraging your network from a really young age.
That's a really good skill actually to teach young people nowadays, which is probably been it's probably not being nourished enough right now in this moment in 2026 when we've got a generation coming through that have been spent most of their formative years of their education in front of their laptops because they couldn't actually go to school because of the COVID
Yeah.
19 pandemic. Um, so so I guess that mental muscle then, that skill set has been honed and refined and nourished through your corporate career. So talk us a bit about, what you did and when you um to progress, what did you study? What did you then go on and do? Because you were in your last organization for a good bunch of time to really help focus those skills, weren't you? Which are setting you up for success now, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. Oh gosh. I'd always had a desire to think about the world beyond ours. So when I was
Okay.
16, you could probably tell I'm American from my accent. When I was, I grew up. I didn't travel that much as a child. I didn't get a passport until I was 16, but my grandparents, as a gift to me for my sweet 16, brought me to where they were from in Sicily, and it just
Wow.
blew my mind.
Wow. 16 and you're the most diversity you've had has been traveling around the US and if you've
Yeah.
even traveled around the US. I mean, okay, it's a big country in and of itself, but to then go beyond the borders and see Italy and Sicily. Whoa, you must have been, yeah,
Oh my
amazing.
it my mind was completely blown. My whole world was upside down and I came back and I said to myself, I am God is my witness. I'm going to be getting not getting out of here, but I'm going to be doing something else,
Yeah,
right? Like there's a whole big world out there. There are so many people and experiences and perspectives and different ways
absolutely.
of thinking and learning. I mean, from a motivation perspective, it completely changed the course of my life. I
Wow.
went from, being very content with going to university around where I grew up and maybe living and working in New York City at some point. But that really drove me to pursue a career that would hopefully pursue a degree and a career that would
Yeah.
hopefully bring me around the world.
Wow.
And that was my dream. My
Yeah.
my first dream was, wow, I hope one day my job gets to send me somewhere for work. That was
Yeah.
like my first goal. So I studied international relations
Okay.
at the University of Scranton, and that was a couple of hours away from where I grew up. So, slowly starting to broaden my horizons and the people around me and diversifying the people around me as well. And then by the time I graduated, I'd gotten my first ever job. I mean, real big girl job.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd
You've
done
had the
I'd done
decorating job, right?
internships. Yeah, yeah. I'd done internships in New York City throughout my university because I grew up so close to New York.
Yeah.
I used to commute in, and I started my career in sales when I was 19.
Wow.
I got a gig at a chemical engineering magazine. Believe it or not, actually,
No way.
the chemical
Really?
engineer. Yeah,
At AICHE, the American Institution of Chemical Engineers. The
no, the
no.
the magazine was called Chemical Engineering. You probably would have seen it. You
Ah,
probably would have known it at some point.
yeah, 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 definitely. Yeah, I'm a chemical
Yeah,
engineer for those that don't know that. That's my background. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
cool.
So yeah, I was doing ad sales at 19 there, and I had this funny experience where one of my clients, she wanted to go to lunch with me because she was based, pretty close, and I was 19. I didn't want her to thinking that I was so young. So, we go, and she said, "Oh, let's go grab a drink." But of course, in the
Oh
U.S., I wasn't
gosh.
allowed. So I had to tell her, "I'm so sorry, but I'm only 19." And she said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that." But she ended up being the person who I'd stayed in touch with, and then
Right.
eventually got my job that I was at for 15 years. So the
Wow.
power of networking, yet again.
Yeah,
Yes,
totally. You
I've
obviously came across as much maturer or established with experience. That 3 years from going to Sicily to being that 19-year-old at the chemical engineer worked wisdom.
pure wisdom. Yes. So I started a career at the time it was a recession, around 2008 time and the
Oh
tricklings
yeah.
of that. So it was actually pretty tough to get a job at that time. But then I came to the point where I started this job and it was diving into the deep end.
Right.
It was, Anna, how do you craft an email to a client? How do you handle 1,000 emails coming in a day? And
So high
they
volume,
really,
high volume like
yes.
traffic, high
It
volume traffic.
Yeah, it was a very high intensity type of job where it was both
Wow.
account management and new business development. So
Okay.
you're literally learning the full life cycle of
Yeah.
a sale and working with some pretty big names. I mean, I was getting in front of VPs, leaders of Fortune 500 companies, and I was like
Okay.
24 years old. I mean,
Such good experience though.
really, really, I learned a lot in my tenure there. And as I started to progress and grow and eventually, be a part of leadership,
Hmm.
it was the kind of skills that to be able to build a book of business from nothing
Yes.
to multi-millions of dollars.
So
So
did you create like what role in this big business or in this business did you carve out your own department or move around or yeah, where what did you end up doing?
I was almost exclusively in the same department. I was in sales
Okay.
the whole time,
Right.
and we had different divisions. So, for the company that was in, we catered to a lot of different industries. And the industry I was focused on was life sciences. So I
Yes.
went up the ranks within life sciences and I started to build out new products for the life sciences team. And what was cool about about that role was that they really gave you all of the tools to be an entrepreneur. And that
Fantastic.
if you are if your ears to the ground, you're listening to clients and what they need, you don't need permission. You can just go and create a new service, and if you sell it, they'll figure it out. That was the
So it's
mentality.
the safeguarding of yeah, it's like that's called like being an entrepreneur. So you've sort of got some of the risk removed because you're in a
Yeah.
container of the corporate structure, but you've got that license to innovate and be supported and it's almost encouraged. It's part of the culture.
Yes, yeah, very much encouraged. I mean, we would have entire sessions at our global training events of how can you create new products for us? And
Wow.
I had a lot of fun supporting that and being a part of that training as well. So, a lot of hats. I got an opportunity to wear a lot of hats at that firm.
And did you get to go traveling? That was what your goal was with when you went to Sicily. You wanted a job that would let you travel. So how much did you travel?
Quite a bit, quite a bit. My first time I traveled was to San Diego, and I was only a month in because it was for our internal training conference. And I remember calling my mom and saying, "Mom, I've made it. I'm going on an airplane." It
Does
was
that
just
count? That's still the United States.
I know, but that was only the first one. But I went, oh gosh, I was very young. They sent me to Dublin,
Okay.
Amsterdam, Italy, Greece, France,
Oh
mostly
wow,
all through
Europe.
Europe. But
Yeah.
then when I eventually moved to the UK,
Yes.
I started going to places like South Africa and Tokyo
Um,
and Shanghai and
Easier to
Singapore.
go from this location, I guess, than the US, but 5 or 6 hours closer to,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think, in time I also became more senior in that
yeah.
time. So I'd spent the first 5 years in New York, and then I've been in now the UK since then. So I
Okay.
think it
Okay.
came a little bit with the seniority and my specialization too.
And so as you started refining and specializing and ascending and more responsibility, where was this idea then for Make Space Brewing? When did that sort of idea start to, when was the seed planted? How long were you nurturing it, letting it take shape before, right, here I go, boom.
Yeah.
And tell us a bit about it as well. Like what do
Yeah,
you do through it?
sure, sure. So I'd say it all started when I fell pregnant with my first son.
Okay.
And I was met with just the most loving, warm support from my manager and the people around me, really. I think on a human level, most people are excited for you,
Yeah.
if not all, really. But I found that when it came down to the things that really mattered for me and my career and my happiness and my mental health, not just me in the prior role that I was in, but for a lot of people, workplaces fall short. It
Yeah.
starts to feel like this 1950s mindset has creeped in where we all thought we were in an age where these things didn't matter anymore and that you're young, you're taught that you can have it all, you can go to school, you can get the job, you can progress,
Hmm.
but then
Hmm.
you get met at this point.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just me. I would look around at the people around me, and at my firm at the time, I was maybe just a handful of parents in a
Hmm.
sales force of 250. And, as I
Wow.
started to look at peers from outside my organization, more and more people were dropping like flies because their workplaces just didn't know how to cope.
Mm.
And it stirred up something in me that just didn't sit well. It just
Right.
didn't feel right. How could we? How could we get this far? At the time it was 2019. How can we get to 2019 and this is still a problem?
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
I said to myself, Anna, you have 6 months and either you figure it out or you leave.
Okay.
And the more digging I started to see, the more I realized how impactful this challenge was. I mean, what's 1 in 3 women leave their place of work after having a child. It's 1 in 4 parents, and that's a lot of people. That's a
Heck
big
of
cohort. That's real impact.
especially the stage that they're at on average in their career when that part of life happens. You're sort of not quite up there yet, but you're also not down there at the junior. But and a lot of time and money and resources has been spent in your development. So yeah, surely you'd want to keep that.
Yeah, I think that there's this bias that parents become less committed or they're less committed even if they want to be, or they're trying to use the system in a way, but it's just not the case. The
Yeah,
majority of it is that people want to do good work, and if they do want to stay in their careers, they don't want to become stagnant. It's
yeah,
a natural part of human behavior to want to progress. And as you said, I mean, you invest time and resources into developing people, and in the research I've done, it's actually really costly to
Yeah.
lose people. I mean,
Yes.
attrition rates are what? They're anywhere from 1.5 to sometimes 4 times that person's salary.
Yeah. My
And
God.
that's a cost for one person. In
Yeah.
professional services, that could mean losing 75 to 150K per person for an organization. So for us, even a mid-sized company, if you are losing a quarter of your workforce that could be very much remediated, right?
Yeah.
Then that's real money. That's millions of pounds that's at risk. So going back to your question on, where did this rumbling start to become? I started really seeing the business need pretty early on. So when I started to think about how to start my company, I went back to my roots of my sales roots of pressure testing and
Okay.
identifying with people that I knew, hey, is this something that is a challenge at your company? Is this, what percentage of your workforce is leaving when they become parents? How much
Yeah.
is that costing you? Are you aware of how much it's costing you? What kind of budgets do you have for training and learning development and consulting to really get down to this space? And
Yeah.
I mean, by and large, it was a resounding yes. So I
Interesting.
I found that by doing that research, and keeping my ear to the ground, much like what I've done in product development and sales, it really started to become clear to me that this was a real business need. And I had the skills to be able
Yeah.
to remediate it. So I think earliest grumblings were probably a year ago, maybe even earlier than that. But I've been working, also on a mentorship level and an ESG level for 6 years now. So I've been out on my own
Yeah.
versus working on this about a year versus about
Right.
6 7 years.
So it was yeah, 2019 on your own experience, partly motivated through your own lived experience. You had your eyes open to this situation of working parents, having experienced it yourself, and thought, "Am I the only person here that this is affecting?" And then seen that it's similar across others. So, what talk us through the point, like when you start designing a business or creating a business, and then when you eventually jump ship and take that final jump when you've not got the safety net of a paycheck, or like, did you go part time? Something like the way I did it was I reduced my hours from being a full-time engineer to doing like 2 days a week, I think, and then I got 2 days a week at like interim roles or something, some consultancy work, and then that was my proving to me that I could do it or that there was a market. And then I eventually left my job and focused 100% on my business at the time. Did it work similar for you, or did you just sort of go straight on, or did you secure some initial work to give you the confidence? I almost feel like Tarzan swings. You're sort of moving from one juncture to the next juncture, and you're like, well, what was your safety net and onwards?
Yeah. I'd say for me, I did a couple of things. So one, I took a good hard look at my own personal finances, right?
Yeah.
Between me, my husband, what we'd had saved, what were our monthly expenses, and
Hmm.
starting to monitor it from that perspective. So I'm a data gal, so I like numbers. So for me,
Yeah.
I like to look at the numbers and think, okay, realistically, what kind of runway do we have here? If I stayed on at my job for another 6 months or 8 months, what kind of runway would that give me for, however long?
Yes.
So once I figured out from a financial perspective that we were actually in a good spot, leaving anywhere after 15 years is a huge choice. So
That's a
it
portion
actually,
of your life. It's the
yeah,
pie chart of your life. It's a good chunk. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was at that role for longer than I still know my husband. So, it's
All right. Okay.
one of the longer relationships I've ever had. So, for me, I really wanted to make sure that this was the right thing to do. I took a very conservative approach with it, and that I still kept my full-time job while
Mhm.
also being a mother of two,
Oh,
and
wow.
did this in the margins of my life. And that
Okay.
meant doing outreach DMs on LinkedIn while I was on the tube on the way to work, on my
Yeah.
lunch breaks, on my tube back, listening to podcasts about industry on those breaks as well, working weekends, nights, getting my husband to be on board with that because I really believed in it and really believed in the vision. And
Okay.
my goal was to secure, my first client before leaving, but we all know how that works, in
Yeah.
B2B sales. So I said to myself, right, if I can have enough of a pipeline of
Yeah.
potential clients with real money on the table, real contracts, then I'll feel good at that point. Because you're
Got
further along in the B2B sales process that normally takes 6 to 12 months. So
Yeah.
if I'm getting to that point, then I know that I have enough, I have a more realistic ramp to play with.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's once I started getting X amount of contracts in, that's when I felt like, okay, it's time for me to notify my employer
Right.
and take the leap. Yeah.
Yeah. So how long's it been now? How long have you been fully make space?
Fully make space. Gosh, it's only been a few months, to be
Right. Okay.
honest.
Okay. So it's
So
it's very
fresh.
fresh, very, very fresh. So tell us then specifically what you do. Like what are the services of Makespace? And then what I want to ask you is about some examples of organizations that are doing it right, what you offer and what good practice looks like.
Sure, sure. So, Make Space, we help employers create a place for working parents to thrive in their careers. And what
Okay.
that looks like is it's a few different legs. The first leg of it is consulting. So, we help employers understand what attrition risks they already have that's based on them, not based on general statistics. And what that looks like is both qualitative and quantitative data, which comes to mind through surveys, feedback surveys, interviews with people on the ground to really
Yeah.
uncover where those challenges are. So, for example, it could be vastly different across organizations. For example, if there is a mid-sized company that just grew a lot and now has a lot of accidental managers that don't have that lived
Yeah.
experience, they really struggle to scale because they end up losing people due to inflexibility.
Yeah.
Or let's say there's been a huge influx of parents, of high performers that have become parents. And so leadership is a little bit nervous about really making sure that they feel good. I had a conversation with a potential client just last week that said her number one goal is to make maternity leave returners stay. She said that's her, and she's like the head of people and culture. She said, this is my number one priority because we cannot lose them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's understanding that like figuring out what is it that your company needs.
Yeah.
And then from there, what do we do with that data? So, is it that your returners need more one-to-one support or facilitated support through group coaching?
Yeah.
That tends to work really well for people coming back from leave. It's quite a vulnerable state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or is it that your leadership, which is often a key challenge, is it that your line managers need more support with understanding how to handle the day-to-day situations? A lot of the challenges come from you might have a good policy in terms of, going on leave and coming back from leave and paying your people well, and that's
Yeah.
all good and well. But it comes down to the day to day. Does the
Culture.
manager,
Yeah. Yeah. The
yeah,
day-to-day
like,
lived experience of because your heart sort of you're still committed. You've become more than what you were before by virtue of having this new role in life, and it doesn't make you less committed to your job at all. But you've got more. You're juggling more balls, so um, it's how to support people then in with the challenges that come with that juggle. Um, yeah, and emotional as well because you've been with your little one for a period and then you're not with them and also the workplace has changed potentially whilst you were away as well. Okay, you get keeping in touch days, but how much do they actually really keep you in touch? Yeah, or people even use them. So there's sort of it's almost like a fragmentation of your identity, and you're sort of like, who am I now?
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
imagine.
absolutely. And I think when you're a manager that's managing someone who has now become a parent, you're now meeting them. You're not just managing them through doing a good job in terms of the role that they're in. You will be met with an intersection of their life, their very
Yeah,
human, personal life. And as it should, right? I mean, I think if something comes up, your child's ill, they've got the chicken pox, and God knows you have to stay home for a month, not a month. You have to stay home for a few days, a
feel
week, and
like that.
yeah, a whole month, goodbye. But let's say your partner is away traveling and you're the only person that can do this. You don't live around other family that can help, right? What's your manager going to say? That will matter. That will matter because those things will only come up more and more and more. And when you're met with a manager that doesn't understand, you start to think about, and as you said, the things with life and kids, those things aren't going to budge, right? Like you picking up your kids or you doing things for your children or even financial challenges, right? In terms of the cost of living and,
Yeah,
even though your workplace is important to you, if it's not meeting you where you need to go, there's no give under here, right? So
yeah,
you will start to look in
laterally. Yeah,
other
yeah.
places.
Do you find with those managers that are in that way, it's not so much that they don't understand the context, it's just the framing has shifted in the years since they themselves were parents, and it's more attitudinal. Like, am I bearing it? Do I'm seeing it through the lens of how I experienced it 20, 30 years ago. We've gone too soft. I only got 2 weeks leave, and my kids are fine now. Deal with it. Why should I see this? I see this tension sometimes in the men's movement, right? In the equal parenting movement, how
Yeah.
fathers can, one of the I think one of the most positive outcomes on a longitudinal study of the performance of boys at school was actually time spent with fathers being present and around them in the early years of their education. Doesn't matter how many private schools or best schools or X, Y, and Z, like time spent with a present father gave positive outcomes relative to those that didn't. And this is only research that we're sort of seeing now, studies that we're seeing now. And so do you find there's a tension between managers and and if there is, like what are some patterns that are a good way to get win people round? How do you shift the needle when this is a context you've got?
Yeah. I mean, this is it, we see it a lot, that's something I see a lot and sometimes when I have conversations with people that say, "Oh, well, sometimes people are just taking the mick, aren't they? They just don't show up to work, and you also have that mentality of a lack of trust. And
Yes.
I'd say that in terms of moving the needle there, well, one, I think it's best to understand the mindset as to the why behind why this leader feels this way. So, like you said, they might have had to white knuckle it
Yeah.
through and feel like this is the only way, and I made it through, and look at me, I'm in one piece, right?
There's some
Or
resentment there, maybe some sort
there's
of.
yeah, there's a touch of resentment, but also they've lived through the experience, so they see the outcome and maybe have accepted the outcome for what it is. So
Yeah.
sometimes I hear from leaders saying, "Well, I barely spent time with my kids, and that's just what I had to do." And you
Sad.
think you have to think to yourself of, well, is that something that you really want to enforce and multiply out,
Mm,
right? Because you are a multiplier as a leader.
yeah.
You set the stage, you set the culture. And that's why a lot of the work that I do is actually focusing on leaders because they have the power to really remove the friction across large amounts of people. And I think one of the challenges is that when it comes to parenting and coaching and training, a lot of what you see out there today is actually geared more towards the individual parent,
Yeah.
which is important, but they also have to be in an environment where they're met with a leader that has been ripened in a way to be receptive to
Oh, I
that.
love that. Ripened. Like that like yeah, they're becoming like the leader themselves have got potential for improvement make space. Is that that's another, like, make space for improvement, but also make space for one another. I like it.
Exactly, exactly. And sorry if I'm rambling a little bit. I'm trying to come
No,
back
I'm
to the
enjoying this.
question.
This is great. I know I'm asking like five questions at once, aren't I?
Well, feel free to ask me, pinpoint with me and say I want you to ask about this. That's okay too.
So, what tools then do you use when you're working with a leader? You know, what does have you got any examples of where you've managed to help make that shift, and then what the if there was any data then that supported the impact of that shift? I appreciate you've only been 2 months in, so you probably don't have this data yet, but or even anecdotally from other organizations when you're doing your research that by supporting this team with this manager, it then led to this individual or this group having a more positive experience, and they definitely stayed because of that intervention.
I would say that the number one differentiator is when people put the human first
Okay.
and they take a proactive approach to it. So, where I see the biggest, failure is a strong word, but where I see companies really struggle is when they don't have a plan in place and they
Okay.
haven't co-created a plan with their employee for what they want
Yeah.
specifically. Because you also don't want to assume, right? So, for example, a manager could assume that someone's coming back to work and wants to go full throttle, right? Which many people do, and that's something that I did. For example, I wanted to be in the office, I wanted to learn as much as I can, but that was also my prerogative.
Yeah.
But many people, it is a very vastly different approach. They might want to come back to work part-time for a little while, which
Yeah.
is available to everyone in the UK. You can request for flexible leave. Or is it that they need to work from home? Or is it that want to they want to stay very closely involved in leadership development and it's very important to them that they progress in their careers, and how
Yeah.
can we work together to make that happen, right? I've heard so many people say that managers say to them, "Oh well, since you've got kids, your career is just basically going to coast for a little while, and then we'll work
Or
on
they
it
make,
later."
yeah, they make the assumption that the individual doesn't want to be put forward for a promotion or put their hat in the ring for a new office location or a new whatever, a new department that's being stood up, to they make the assumption because they're new parents. So it doesn't come to a point of being malicious. It's just assuming, and you shouldn't assume. You should open up opportunities to as many as possible, um and then I'll also recognize that this might be a mindset or a situation that exists. So is there an overcorrection that's needed? Is there a um like proactively finding out if the tranche of recent returners who came back to your organization in the last 6 months are interested for this? So it's not that they're getting the opportunity because they're returners, but that statistically they're less likely to be being asked or they're checking out. So you're actively going out to just make sure they're aware of the opportunity.
Yeah, I'd say so. Is your question that are they are leaders kind of taking a more a too big of an approach by kind of blanketing the same
Well,
approach across all?
I think, well, a question that flagged up in my mind when you were talking was it's interesting when you said when you don't have anything in place and therefore you need to co-create the solutions. I wonder if sometimes organizations that don't have anything in place yet, through that co-creation, they actually create a really great outcome. And if they do it right. And then is there a situation sometimes where an organization thinks it has it sorted because they've got the policies, the procedures, it's all documented, they've got the great pay, the great leave, they've got the HR team and the diversity team and whoever team that helps with the mechanics. But actually, none of that is enacted, none of that is lived and
Yeah.
breathed. So actually, there's a blaseness on the part of the leader, and actually maybe it would be better if some of that stuff didn't exist. And from the point of engaging that leader, I mean, in the education, obviously it's better if that stuff exists. Um, but to then involve the leader in, like, I guess that leader still needs to do the work, the same level of work as the leader who's in a business that doesn't have the support structure. Like in a small medium enterprise, you are everything when you run a business, and you're a small team of 5 to 10 people. You are HR, you are diversity, you are finance, you are procurement, you are everything, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, what sort of pattern are you seeing between different organizational sizes?
I think that there's different attitudes. So if a company does have good equal pay
Yeah.
and they are a small enough size where everybody kind of knows everybody, if it's a team of less than 30, they don't feel like there's a need because the culture is in and of itself, right?
Yes.
Everyone knows each other's kids' names.
Yeah.
They could feel quite flexible in that. They have good pay, and that in that case, that's usually a really positive environment.
Hmm.
But it's when that group starts to grow and scale that you start to see inconsistencies
Right.
pop up, and policy often doesn't translate to the day to day because
Yes.
the policy is usually very legal HR jargon. Like
Yeah.
you have X amount of statutory pay, you have X amount of kit days, and all of that is important and good. But when it comes to how do you ease somebody back into work, it's very rare that there's any kind of training on that.
Yeah.
Or
True. True. True.
how do you maintain someone's career progression when they've got two kids at home and they're a single parent? There's not much guidance for managers because when they're met with a very personal item that they have not been trained from a management
Yeah.
perspective on, they feel
You're
out
in
of
the
their
head.
depth. They
Yeah.
freeze. Like,
What's
oh my goodness.
what's your view on companies publishing their policies on what their maternity, paternity, shared parental, adoption, surrogacy, etc., 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 those benefits on their website? So if you're a job hunter and you're looking for things, it kind of is a bit like smoke and mirrors. They're
Mm,
hard to find. They're very nearly never ever published up there. But if you're wanting to make a choice and commit X number of years to a company where that duration of you being there is going to go through the years that you think that you're going to have a kid or start a family, that might be something in your research that would be useful to have. And then if this employer over here has all the great stuff and this employer doesn't, then it might help be a point of attraction and then loyalty for employers. So do organizations make those types of benefits public, their policies public? And watch, because it's been so long since I mean, my kids are getting older now, so it's a phase that, and I was running my own thing back when I had kids, so it wasn't
mhm.
relevant for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, just curious on your position on that or your experience in that.
Yes. I'd say that when companies do publish that information online, something to look out for is the specifics. So
Okay.
you can be really generalistic, where you pop up a testimonial from an employee saying they were they have an excellent maternity and paternity plan. I would come back again and again, right? Like that's, all well and good, but I'd say publishing it, the full transparency, if you see actual lists of what people are getting exactly as if you were to see it in a company handbook,
Yeah.
then that would be fantastic. And
Yeah. Good.
the numbers that I was mentioning earlier of 1 in 4 parents leaving the workplace, it's not that they're leaving to become stay-at-home parents. It's that they're actively looking for organizations that get it and understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, when it comes to productivity and efficiency, statistics show, I think it was Harvard Business Review,
Hmm.
but amongst others, many other firms have done something similar where a group that is flexible and allows for you to be your own agent in terms of
Yeah.
determining what your life looks like when you need to leave, when you come back, when it
Yeah.
comes to outcomes. I think it's 40% more productive. So
Yeah.
you're getting more out of your employees when you're doing this. So not only are you getting the best talent, but you are creating a place where people want to stay and do their
Yeah.
best work. So the companies that are not doing this and not publishing, I mean, it's such a simple thing to do
Yeah.
to put it on your site.
And you get that
I would
loyalty.
be yeah, I would be wary to make sure, as a someone that's looking for a role to actually see if proof is in the pudding on
Mm,
what's being said on their site versus not. But I think it's a huge opportunity for companies to do this to really
yeah.
attract people and a huge cohort of high quality employees.
I think, yeah, it's like, yeah, I guess people would write stuff on Glassdoor, wouldn't they? I mean, sometimes it's disgruntled employees that will go in there and write stuff. Or is there another one called Fishbowl I've heard about? It's like people who currently work in Glassdoor is like when you've left, and then this other is like when you're actually in the company. It's anonymous. I'm not sure. I had another. Oh, I just wanted to say about advertising pay on job descriptions. When I lived in New York, New York have got an act that sort of you have to publish it. I mean, you can give a range, that it's like
Hmm.
can vary by 55%, depending on the state in which you live. Um, but it was just so when I was job looking, it was just so useful to just see the salary ranges or a salary bracket. And then you come back to the UK and then that isn't a legal requirement here. It's quite annoying when you just see the title competitive.
Yeah. Pardon me.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I think it's to be honest. I mean, this might. I'm going out on a limb here, but I think it's a colossal waste of time.
Yeah, it is.
When you get in, you start emailing. The person that's submitting their resume, for example, is taking the time to really curate a resume that fits whatever's being asked of them, and then you do the back and forth. I mean, the recruiting process is a very timely, costly experience. Not, I mean, for the employer, that's a lot of time and money if they're employing someone else to do the recruiting, or if they're taking it in house. I mean, it's a lot of money spent of people's time,
Yeah,
and
it is.
salary is, it's kind of a make or break. If you look at something, you're like, absolutely not. Why did I just waste 2 weeks
Why
on
is that?
this?
I know.
You
You
know,
sort of
I
cross your fingers and hope it's a decent range or number when you come to if you make it through the hoops. So tell us about before we move on to quick fire questions. Tell us about the future then for Makespace and what your hopes are. What if we fast forward a year or 2 years from now? What does success look like for you?
success for me is when I sit down with the people that I've trained and the people that they've impacted. So a lot of my work is also gaining insights into every piece of the work that I do. So I often co-create actually on workshops of what feedback do you want to give your employer for them to work on next? What do you want to see next within this company? And for me, gosh, the dream would be to get the kind of feedback that I've changed the course of my career. I've changed the course of my livelihood. I've stayed in the workplace to pursue my career and my dreams because of the work that we've done together.
Oh,
Because it's my it I'm not only doing it for the parents that are of our generation,
yeah,
millennials, right? I'm looking at the folks in Gen Z who are
yeah, yeah,
coming out
yeah,
of university and have,
yeah. They are. They are.
big eyes and excited for the future that have no idea what they're going to be met with when they start to have children. And
Yeah,
that's the near future. And
yeah,
Gen Z as well statistically are less inclined to stay at a
mm,
workplace if it's not working for their well-being. So, I'm doing it not just for the parents of today, I'm doing it for the not so far generation below and even beyond. Because if we're not investing in this kind of space now, it's, there's a lot of data out there right now of less and less people staying in the workplace,
yeah,
predominantly women who are leaving the workplace. It's gotten it's on a downward spiral turn statistically
yeah.
globally.
In
So for
engine
me, success is seeing
counter
that feedback a year from now.
in engineering, we've got it's the group that are leaving in the largest amount largest volume women in the age 34 to 50. I mean, it's quite a big range, they say, 34 to 54 bracket. So when you think about succession planning of ascension of female leaders, to fill boards and everything, if you've got if you're hemorrhaging talent, losing talent, it's actually a chemical engineering analogy of a bucket. If you've got more coming in than you've got coming out, or if you've got more coming out than you've got coming in, you're not in a state of accumulation. So all this money that's being put into getting those people here, we need to keep them as well. I think there's also sometimes we miss in these conversations the opportunity that exists because we're in a bit of a transition, right, generationally just now as well, where some of the generations above us are still in the workforce. They've got the skills, knowledge, and wisdom that we want to pass down to the generations coming through, to keep them in longer as well. So that there's a longer time to do that skills and knowledge parting on. Some of the work you speak about, there's almost some cathartic coaching or making amends with how your context was in the past to see it differently now for the people that are coming through. And for that group that might be becoming grandparents and so on and so forth, to see it in a different light, to try and let go of that resentment that they maybe have from when they were younger, when they had kids, to actually think, well, look, this is going to enable your children to have a different relationship with their kids, and actually flexible working, etc., can help you have time with your grandkids, if you're wanting to stay and work a bit longer. So I think there's a positioning of the conversation sometimes as well. People are selfish, right? They want to know what's in it for them with their context. And I wonder if there's opportunity to gain there in engineering specifically. I'm talking about here, where we really do need to keep on to who we've got for as long as possible because we've not got the talent coming through, to frame it in that way.
I love that. I think that's a really strong point to make, that parenthood is although it's a very vulnerable piece in which I focus on, I also have a lot of conversations about people that are later on and focusing on caring for their own parents and a loved one, because that also requires a level of flexibility.
Yeah.
Statistically, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's quite a large number of people that leave the workforce because they have to go care for an elderly parent of their own. And again, you're being called to this as a part of your own personal life. What are you going to say? No, I think it's important to think through life phases more as a part of the true end to end. So parenthood being a piece of it, but then moving through carehood for women in menopause. It's also a huge life transition. But I think what you said is right, in that having that mindset shift in multiple ways, and how it applies to them now, and drawing those parallels could be a really powerful tool.
Love that. And I cannot believe we've had this whole podcast and not mentioned caring, because you are so on it. You're so right. They're the sandwich generation, aren't they? Where you're caring for your kids as you're bringing them up, and hopefully you can get far on in life until that side of things. I live in a family where there was actually 5 generations. In fact, there is still 5. My great-gran, my gran, my dad, me, and my son. So my son's great-great-gran is still alive. But that means that my gran, who's 77, her mum, who's 97, is still around, And it's interesting, like, having that longevity to get to that age and still have your parent around, I was in that group. My mum passed away last summer, unfortunately. She had me very young. And we were only able to do what we did because my sister had time to help care, and we had the support of the local community that came in and care about hospital appointments and this and that and this and that. I wouldn't, living in London and going up to Edinburgh, I just wouldn't have been able to do it, without relocating if I had to be the primary caregiver. So, and I run my own business, I cannot imagine having the stress of an employer and the juggling and do a every hospital appointment or this and that. It's really, really tough. So I think that is a really good idea, a really good suggestion to bring the parallels to and make it obvious that it's beneficial for that management tranche as well, because they might need to enact the benefits of that flexible working policy in months or years to come. Yeah. All right. Quick fire questions. You ready?
I'm ready as I'll ever be.
You're ready. Right, okay. What's one workplace myth you'd love to bust?
That paternity leave impacts men's careers.
What's the best habit for high performing managers?
Oh, not making assumptions.
Worst phrase you hear in performance conversations?
That parents are less able and less committed to deliver.
What's the best book not about business that has shaped your thinking?
That's easy. It's Captivate by Vanessa Van Edwards. I reread it every couple of years. It's fantastic for understanding the psychology of people
Oh,
and
okay.
reading people in the moment. It's an excellent, excellent book.
What's the most underrated factor in employee retention?
Underrated factor. Line manager capability and ability and training. I think
What's
having them be prepared to deal with the people side of the business.
Yep. What's your ideal way to switch off after a busy week?
I love going on walks. It sounds like when you're on a date, what do you like? Going on long walks on the beach. But no, I love getting out in the neighborhood, and I'll go for a walk to the cafe. I don't listen to anything. I just go for a walk. I take in what's around me, and it resets me really well, and it allows for me to kind of remove myself from a screen.
Yeah. Coffee, tea, or something stronger?
Coffee, always.
Always.
Oh, I'm
What's
a big coffee nut.
what's a failure that changed how you lead?
I at one point I had someone who reported into me who had shared that they were that their mental health was not great. And in that moment as a manager, I have to admit I froze because I just didn't know the right thing to do. I didn't want to say
Right.
the wrong thing. I didn't want to point them in the wrong direction. And in the end, I tried to be as empathetic as I could, but I didn't read between the lines either as to
Okay.
why she was sharing it with me. I think I could have done a better job of not just listening, but reading the situation and feeling equipped with how to handle it.
Okay.
Yeah, not my proudest achievement, and I did get feedback on it, but
Okay.
it has stayed with me.
Well, that we all have to fail in order to improve. So sounds like you've done that. Finally, then, what's one word that sums up what good work means to you?
Good work. Does good sustainable growth.
Okay, that's two words, but
Sustainable
we'll let you
growth.
have that. That's fine.
Oh, sorry.
Brilliant. That's fine. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed that chat. If people want to find out more, if people want to get in touch, find out more about Make Space, how should they do that?
There's a few ways. You can go to my website, www.makespaceconsulting.com. I'm on Instagram, makespace.ltd. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn, Anna Burgan, and you'll be able to find Make Space on there too.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Anna. Really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thanks, Mark.
You have been listening to the Safe Leader podcast, uncovering the diversity story behind leading figures championing change to make our world a better place. If you have enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the Safe Leader podcast on your podcast platform of choice and get notified when a new episode goes live. Did you know that we also offer a full transcript on each of our podcast episodes? Check out my website, McBride-Wright.com. Here, you can also explore the training, coaching, and keynote speaking services I offer. And whilst you're there, why not join the Safe Leader community by subscribing to the Safe Leader Insights mailing list? Thank you for listening, and please come back and join us on a future episode.